What's going on, YouTube family, Kingdom family? What's up? What's up? What's up? About to get started here. I know it's 7 o'clock, but I'm gonna give some of you guys another 60 seconds to get yourself straight, grab something to write with. If you're in the midst of doing anything, please stop because I always deliver a nugget or two that you can pull and apply to your life. Okay. So this is Tyreek again, Kingdom Diplomat Holdings. We're going to get started here in the next 35, 40 seconds. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. Let's get this puppy started, right? I don't know where that came from. So I hope you guys had a great weekend. Welcome to week 13, or should I say episode 13, season 1 of Kingdom Diplomat. I think I've at least one time explained what that phrase and those words mean. And hopefully, if you follow me through this journey, I know 100% this is going to transform your life spiritually, mentally, and physically. It's going to fit the whole person, the whole human being, right? Spirit, soul, and body, right? Unfortunately, most people don't even know that most people believe, or some people, should I say, believe that they just have a flesh, with 5 senses, and they have a soul, and that's not even totally accurate as far as knowing the entirety of that, and not even knowing that they actually are a spirit also too. But maybe that'll come out during my talk. So again, hopefully you guys had a great weekend. I do understand, obviously, goes by too fast, doesn't it? So some of the principles that I'm going to go over again, you're going to hear if you've been following me over and over and over again, right? Because repetition is right, I like to say. Actually, I haven't said that before, so that's a new one. Repetition is right. The word right has to do, it's not actually a religious word, but it's actually a kingdom word. It's a government word. That's the root word of like righteous, which is a government word. It means to be rightly positioned. It has to do with the position of a person, right? A quick example I can give you of that, and golly, I started teaching already, is well, let me back up. So number one, the word righteous is actually not a religious word, just like I said before last week, and I said in previous talks, that the word sin is actually not a religious word. They are government words. Now, the word sin means to rebel and commit anarchy, right? And you can't rebel or commit anarchy in a government, right? You can only do that in a religion. Now, let me get back on track. So, let me back up a little bit even more now, so I don't forget this. Please subscribe. Please pass on. I got the chat box open, and if you don't mind, just put in what city that you're watching me from. I really appreciate that. It kind of gives me some data as far as some ideas as far as where I need to go, as far and generally speaking. So thank you for sharing time with me. I know it's going to be very fruitful for you. And I'll say this a million times. I've said this, seems like a million times, but I'll keep saying it. That is, I'm not looking to give you my opinion. I'm looking to give you principles, laws. Why? Because those things are the only two things. And let me distinguish that. A principle, basically, the root word of principle is prince, right? If you have a king and a queen and they have a child, he's called a prince, and the daughter is called a princess. Okay. And so, with that being said, it means like the first law. That's what a principle means, right? So that's what I aim to do, to empower people to understand the seen laws and the unseen laws. And see, a lot of our frustration, a lot of our mistakes, a lot of our mishaps, sins, right? That we've done, it was because of lack of knowledge. And our our future, or should I say our present and future mishaps, mistakes, or sins, right? Rebel, anarchy, would be based upon our lack of knowledge. So in Hosea 4:6, I like to mention this in the Constitution. And if you've been following me before, and welcome if this is your first time, Jesus Christ actually is not a religious man, and he didn't bring a religion. Okay. And I'll get into that. I'll prove that, right? Because I'm the type of person that if you're going to state something, you need to have some evidence, right? Your words and your actions have to line up, because everything, if you think about everything, a lot of the complaints that we have as human beings are evolving around, guess what? The legality of something, right? Think about that. Everything is about legality. So, now let me go ahead I want to get back to some of the basics, because I had a conversation with, I was at a barbershop today, and I had a great conversation, and it just kind of got my juices flowing. And somebody was asking me some questions. My barber was asking me some questions, and I don't think I can emphasize this enough, right? So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go back again to the cornerstone of the basics and talk about a kingdom versus a democratic republic. I can't emphasize that enough, because our ideas that we have in our mind have basically led to the ideas and the concepts, and as far as which leads to our beliefs, and leads to our philosophy, and leads to our theology, and that determines our future, right? And that also can determine in many different ways to the people who we influence. And some people don't think that they're an influence, which is, everybody's an influence, right? That's part of leadership, and I hasten to say sometimes, or should I say reluctant to say the word leadership, which I shouldn't be, because we've been conditioned so much to think that we're just followers. And I think somebody needs to hear that. So if you look up the definition of that, well, let's put it like this. So every person is born to be a leader, but they're trapped in their follower, right? So I have X amount of people follow me in different platforms and social media. You guys do too, right? And it's kind of like a badge of honor in this world system, right? I got all these different followers, but the followers don't know the person personally, right? They're just following some of their content in which they, maybe believe or semi believe, or, are just interested in, right? And so I'm sure if you follow me long enough, and if you haven't, if this is your first time, go back and look at some of my shorts, look at some of my previous talks. You'll see that one of the ways that people start following other people is that if they're excited, about the content that they're speaking about, maybe if they're funny, or I like to say people who are, you can tell when people are genuine, right? When you see somebody who's consistent over time. And that comes from character, but you can tell when somebody cares, you can tell when somebody's genuine, because now, and in many different instances, you can actually get a certain vibe of people who aren't, right? And hopefully you can tell that some of the stuff that I've shared and given you some of the successes that I've had in my life, and that I'm in the process of me, my wife, our family in general, that I've shown you some evidence of how these principles work. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, yes, please like, please subscribe, and please share. Okay. So let's go ahead and get back down to, like I said before, some of the basics again. So I actually wanted to look up. This is the first time I've ever done this. I looked up online. I'm looking at it right now, as far as what a kingdom versus a democratic republic is, right? Or what's the difference between that? And that's one of the things I was talking about in the barbershop today. That let's start off from the democratic republic perspective, because this is very important. Why? Because these concepts, these ideas have been ingrained in us, right? The world is controlled, and the world is operating based upon ideas. I'm sure you would agree with that. Concepts. Okay. Now, here's something that a lot of people, you very rarely ever hear people talk about: precepts. No, what is a precept? Well, you know what a prefix is. Pre means before, right? Predate, prefix, so on and so forth. A precept, right? So it means before, and then concept means idea, right? What's your idea? So it's the ideas that we're thinking in our mind, right? So what do I always say? The most important real estate on this planet is what? The 6 inches that are between our ears, because they determined how do we see ourselves. Those 5 questions that I talk about a lot, those 5 questions that are just, that affect everything that we do, right? Those 5 questions that affect history. Who are we? That's our identity. Why are we here? What's our origin? Where are we going? What's our vision? Where are we supposed to end up at, right? The end of our natural life and into eternity. And what can we do? What are our gifts, right? And where are we from? Okay, so those are the 5 most important questions. Now, let's go ahead and kind of dig into the democratic republic. So a democratic republic comes from the Greeks. And I mention this over and over and over again. Number one, as I said before, is because we've been programmed by the ideas, and it started with Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Okay. I want to empower you to get that knowledge, to understand how you've gotten to the place you've gotten in your life, and how I've gotten to the place I've gotten in my life in many different areas, right? So the Greeks, they were thinkers, right? Thinkers will always outdo fighters majority of the time, right? Because they're always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. It's just like contractually, when before you sign something, and that's a tip. That's why lawyers and certain corporations make contracts just so long. I don't know if you know this, but when you download an app, and apps that are already stored on your phone, that you're giving them permission, right, to suck up all your information like a vacuum. Everybody's used a vacuum before, right? So indelibly, it's who's actually going to spend a lot of that time. But you've heard the saying before: the devil is in the details. And I don't know about you, but we've all been hoodwinked about the details, right? It's I don't know why I'm going this way, but I'm sure it's going to help somebody out. You can say a sentence like, and I remember this in school. This is one of the tests, and you can say, Johnny had a red ball, right, and went to the store. But then you can take those same words and you can say the red ball was in, Johnny had the red ball, and well, you get what I'm trying to say, right? You can use 5 words, and then you can rearrange the words, but they can mean 2 different thoughts. That's what I meant to say. Okay. So you got to be very careful as far as, understanding the details of things, right? So anyway, that was just a side tip. So let's get into the democratic republic. So Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Essentially, their leadership philosophy, and you can look, please look this up if you do some reading on them, okay, is that they basically said, if you don't look like us, you're our slave, right? Because you know why? Because what do we want to do and what's in us that we want to have? And I said this last week, it's power, right? We want power and we want the ability to, which means the ability to control circumstances, right? We don't want to be sick. We don't want to be diseased. We don't want to be poor. We don't want to lack. Every human being has that desire to be powerful, right? And that's actually natural. The manufacturer, God put that in every product. And when I say product, I'm talking about mankind. The species of mankind is a product, right? Because every product has a manufacturer, okay? And so since we want that power, the reason why that is because that's how we were created, right? And that's what we lost at the beginning. You know, I'm going to say this again. Go back to the book of Genesis. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're Muslim, atheist, whatever like that. Your problems and your future problems and challenges will be based upon the ideas that you already have in your mind, right? Because it's cyclical, right? You know, thoughts are like NASCAR, they keep coming around. And the reason why history keeps repeating itself is because we fail to change this and go back to the beginning of the book of Genesis, right? Challenge yourself, right? That's all I'm saying. Challenge yourself. I'm not trying to sell you on anything or anything like that. You know, some people say, man, you're just, you know, you're trying to get me involved in some type of religion. Listen, I'm not, I don't belong to any religion, especially the top four religions, right? Used to be, right? Used to be, but no longer, because what I realize is that Jesus Christ, Jesus, again, let me go over that real quick. Jesus being the Son of God, the Son of Man, meaning God with us in the natural body, this flesh body, was inhabited by Christ, which is the second of the Godhead, and he was the creator. Okay. You know, some Muslims say, well, how can he be one God, but three different gods? Well, it's called an anthropomorphism. Most people have never heard that. It's a Greek word, right? That means only in the role of creation, he had to give us an idea of whose image we were created in. I hope you got that. If you haven't got it, listen to it again. So it's called an anthropomorphism. It's a Greek word, okay? And so you got God the Father, you got God the Son, you got God the Holy Spirit. So what does that tell you about that? Well, in Genesis 1:26, NIV version. Always choose the NIV version. Why? Because it's a modern day version. Don't choose the King James version. You got to be very, very careful of these other versions out here. The reason why I say that is because there's people who own these companies or who bought these companies by using other people. Here's another, this is a big tip. Because see, the enemy, the second enemy, which is Satan, the first enemy is lack of knowledge, right? As Hosea 4:6 says, people perish because of lack of knowledge. But Satan knows that he knows about the kingdom because his former name used to be Lucifer, right? He was the god he was head of worship. And so worship has to do with culture, right? The ministry of worship. That's a department. That's a government word. Ministry actually is a government word. It's not a religious word. I don't know if you guys know that. You know, if you look in the United States, in the natural realm, you have the Ministry of Defense. You know, other countries may call it another thing, but that's essentially what they're saying, right? So, folks, this is not about religion. This is about government business, right? And this is about three things that I say. What's the Bible about? The Bible is a constitution. It's not a religious book, right? The Bible is a constitution. It's not a religious book. The Bible is a constitution, not a religious book. So a constitution is part of a government, and a government has a head of state, and the head of state is Christ. Christ means Mashiach, anointed king, and a king, which I'm about to get into after I talk about this democratic republic, is opposite. They're totally different, opposite government structures, okay? So that the problems, the challenges, and all the things that we went through was because of our lack of knowledge and not knowing that we are in a government experience, a colonization idea, right? And in some aspects, we were taught to rebel and not even to declare independence, right? That's what we did from the UK, right? Because I was born in one colony in the natural realm, and I grew up in another colony, right? The 13 original colonies. Okay, so follow me here. Now, so a democratic republic, as I said before, comes from Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Now, they were the first people to construct, listen to me now, they were able to construct a system of crowd manipulation, right? To work on this mind and you not even know it. So a lot of the beliefs, I would say all the beliefs that we have right now about, especially about ourselves, I would say 95 to 98% of them are wrong, right? Every human being, 8+ billion of us and counting, are actually has a vision already lying dormant and an assignment lying dormant on the inside of us, right? I said this earlier today when I was at the barbershop. The wealthiest spot on the planet is what? It's not the African diamond mines, even though they're being, raped, robbed, and pillaged by a lot of European countries and other countries in the Western world, and okay, including this country in different aspects, right? It's not the gold mines in South America, right? Lots of gold down there. It's not that oil that just keeps producing, that self-producing mineral that will never go away. So if somebody ever tells you that there's not enough gas, there's no such thing as that. If somebody, it doesn't matter who it is, I don't care if it's your mom, your dad, sister, brother, your spouse, or anything like that. They're being programmed the wrong way. There's no such thing. There's so much gas, there's so much energy, you got energy in your body. Here's another fact right here. I don't know if you know this, but you have enough energy just in your brain that emits 25 watts, enough to light up a light bulb, or should I say enough power in your brain to light up a 25-watt light bulb. Isn't that amazing? The 4 to 7 trillion cells that you have in your body, what do you think they're made of? Atoms, right? You got the macro and you got the micro. I'm not going to get into all that and everything, but this is stuff you need to look up because this is part of your body and this is part of your spirit and your soul. This is part of you, right? Now, so they basically said, getting back to Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, is that we need to come up with ways to a system to control the masses and how they think. Why? So we can keep them subjugated, right? Below, right? Words are everything. Words create ideas, right? In our mind, and we have ideas about ourselves, okay? And so, so breaking it down, a democracy starts from the bottom. Their power structure starts from the bottom, okay? And it essentially, a democracy has to do with citizens electing from their constitution. That's where they get their power, because citizenship is a powerful thing, right? You have rights according to the Constitution, right? And I was just saying in general. And so in regards to a democratic republic, we elect people to represent us. So they're kind of like a chief citizen, right, to rule over us, right? Whether you somebody locally, a mayor or a city council member, or you got a state, a governor, and so on and so forth, right, all the way up to president, right? So the power structure in a democratic republic is from the bottom and it goes up, right? If you put them in office, generally speaking, we know that's not true, because money talks, right, and bull walks, right? One of these bankers, you probably heard it before, the Rothschilds. He said, the original Rothschild. He said, I'm just paraphrasing. You can look this up. He said basically, I don't care what laws a country pass, as long as I got control over the money, it doesn't matter. Basically, that's what I got from it. In other words, I can control no matter what laws you pass. But generally speaking, that's how a democratic republic works. The citizens elect the officials or unelect the officials, right? So that's from the bottom up. Now, in the kingdom, right, in Christ's kingdom, Christ means what? Mashiach, anointed king. And if you're a different religion, just keep listening to me. Don't be afraid, right? It floors me sometimes when you have different. I run into different people with different religions. I start talking about certain things, they'll get intimidated. I don't know why. If you think your religion is the truth or whatever like that, then why get afraid? Why not? Why not get a different perspective? I like listening to different people, right? But anyway, so a kingdom is run by a king, and as we already talked about, Christ is a king. It talks about that in this Constitution. In Psalms, he tells he's the king of who's the King of glory, the Lord strong and mighty, the King of glory, the King of glory. That word, if you run a quick reference of how many times king is mentioned in the Bible, it'll blow your mind, right? So notice it didn't say Christianity, right? Now, what did I say before last week and the week before? I believe I said that. I said, since, let's say, for instance, President Trump. Now, I'm talking, you got to remember, this is not about a religion. This is about a government. So in a government, as people have elected President Trump, right? So people who voted for him, right, don't run around saying, I'm a Trumpite, right? Or before Bidenite or Trumpite before that. You know what I'm saying? Obamaite, right? And so, therefore, I say Christ brought a kingdom. He's a king, right? A king has a domain and he owns everything, right? The people, the natural resources, the animals, and so on and so forth. So why would you say Christ and Christian? And the reason why that is very simple is that people don't understand the colonization idea, okay? That's why. The people who called them that, First or Second Corinthians, I learned from my spiritual dad, is that the Romans called them the people they call them Christ followers, and there's a phrase they used to call them actually the people of the way, right? If you ever heard that phrase before, it's on the Mandalorian, the Disney series, The Mandalorian. They say the people of the way, right? And George Lucas would know about that because obviously, I don't know if you know this, but he's Jewish, right? So they had to learn from the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books, right, written by Moses. And anyway, so, and oh, by the way, most of the religions, their cornerstone is based upon Abraham, right? But guess what? Yahweh or Jehovah told Abraham to leave that place. Why? Because his dad and his family members were worshiping the moon. It was idol worship, right? He told them to get out of there. But that's just a side note. Anyway, and that moon and star that they're looking at, that they were worshiping, guess what? That's what you call, or if you look at certain countries, they have a moon and a star, right? That's Islam right there. Okay, so that came from that area also too, but that's a side note. Okay, now, so a king, again, as I said before, or previous times, is a politician. A king is a politician. A king is born into royalty, right? If you pay attention, I don't, but if you pay attention to, and this is in the natural, I'm talking about Prince William. If you read any articles on him, he never talks about money, right? Because he was born into the family, right? Now, naturally speaking, also too, see, under a democratic republic, if your parents and your family was poor and you were born, you're a poor baby. That's the natural part speaking, right? But now check this out. You hear the good news of what? The cross? No. Now, I believe in the cross, as I said that before. I got washed in the blood before. But the cross is a means to an end. It's a checkpoint. If I'm here at point A and I'm trying to get to point B, there's checkpoints, right? If I got a 3,000-mile trip, well, obviously you're going to stop and fill up for gas. You have to use the bathroom, depending upon how many people with you. If you got kids, it's going to be multiple times. You may want to do some sightseeing, how much time we have, and everything like that. So just picture the cross being in the middle, right? Most people, what they do in Christianity and whatever their religion is that they'll stop right there, right? And then they'll build a system of rules around there. Why? Especially in the Western world. because, as I said before, we were born under a democratic republic, so we like to do that. Now, you may want a religion, right? Many people do. Now, I know there's people, I bet you 100% there's people that have listened to my talks before, and I give them evidence, and they can look in the Bible, their Constitution, they can see what Christ was saying and the whole thing. They may not understand everything, but they see the scriptures over and over and over and over again. And then there's people that'll walk away and say, you know what? I know what you said. I know you said the same thing that God said. But my mama and them and their mama and them and their granddaddy and them, they stuck with this denomination or that religion, and that's what I'm going to do, because we're creatures of habit, and we don't like to look in the mirror because it's pride. Basically, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Ugly, stinking pride. And so you're listening to somebody at some point in time, at different times in my life, had that same pride. See, this is something I didn't divulge to you guys before. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I didn't divulge this before. I seen this concept. The Lord showed me this concept twice. And guess what I did? I looked the other way, right? Because I didn't hear it preached. I didn't hear nobody talking about it. It wasn't around me, right? It wasn't familiar to me, right? We're creatures of habit. We like taking the same route to work. We like doing the same things over and over and over again. And that's why we have to be shocked. The word shock means to offend somebody, right? I used to think it was something else, but I never looked it up, right? Lack of knowledge I had. But that's what it is. That's what it means. So a lot of times we need to be shocked. So why am I saying this? I'm trying to challenge your thinking, okay? See, I knew something was wrong. You know how you can tell something is wrong? Let's say you walk into a room and you can tell the atmosphere is not right. Let's say a husband and wife or siblings were vehemently, violently arguing, right? And they were throwing around words, heavy words. And by the way, words have sound, and words have a frequency in it. I don't know if you knew that, but they do, right? They're containers that are filled with a frequency, and that affects our brain, and it also affects our mind. I don't have time to get into it, but your mind and your brain are two different things. Remember what I said? We're a three-part being. So anyway, so let me get back over here because I don't got too far down that rabbit trail, but I know it's helped some people out. So, all right, so let me wrap this thing on up. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. I'm trying to encourage you guys, empower you guys to understand a kingdom and a democratic republic are two different power structures, right? Because if you don't know that and you're reading the Bible, I guarantee you 100% of the time, if you don't understand a kingdom, that it's a kingdom book and not a religious book, you'll come to the wrong conclusion. And then that wrong conclusion is a lie. And guess what? We proclaim and preach a lie to other people, right? You wonder why there's over 300,000 churches here, just buildings, so to speak. I don't like to say churches because the word church actually does not mean the building. It actually is a Greek word. It's not a Bible word. There's those Greeks again, right? It's a Greek word, and church means to called out ones. It means ecclesia, right? It's kind of like I said before, football huddle. You have the head of state of that country, like being the quarterback, and then you have the offensive line is kind of like his, Senate or his Congress and everything like that. And the head of state calls the play, right? And that's what they enact when they go out and play. Hopefully you've seen a football game before, but I'm trying to give you a good depiction of that. But they're opposite ends of governments, right? So since we were born in this Western world, we all still have Greek ideas, Greek precepts in our mind. So that's why it's hard to understand the Bible. But dear one, if you go and study some of the kingdom concepts, if you look it up on YouTube, take 10 or 15 minutes a day out of your day, shut off some of that crappy TV that's causing you to be broke and stay broke. Why did I say that? Because this is another side. I'm dropping these nuggets. I don't know if you know this, but as I said before, words carry frequencies and they affect our mind. Did you know, generally speaking, musicians probably know this, and other people in the music industry, the general hurts that we're supposed to, how can I say this? That's normal, that we can relax to, is supposed to be at, if I remember correctly, 435. Could be wrong. May want to look that up. I may need to kind of look that up again. I think it's 435, A435. But there's some people out there who actually understand what I'm just telling you and said, hey, you know what? Why don't we use a figure to and do propaganda to try to change the way people think and increase that to 445, I think it is, or 440. So at that hertz, 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 did you know that actually causes disharmony in your brain? It causes aggression, right? Violent aggression. You ever wonder why people can just be sitting at a basketball game or sitting at a football game and just everybody's enjoying the game, and in the next minute, bam, they just start, two people start fighting, and three, and then four, and it just gets into this big, there's probably a whole compilation of that online, right? You can look that up. But that's a side note. But there's people actually today that actually do that. So the media industry knows that, okay? The music industry actually knows that. So you ever wonder why you listen to certain music? You could be prior to that in a happy mood and you listen to certain music, it makes you angry or happy, sad, all these different emotions. That's because the hertz have been increased, right? So it does affect our mind. And so it's the same thing with TV. That actually affects our DNA. So that's another side note. Anyway, so in closing, let me get out of here. So in closing, again, a kingdom is not a religion, and it's not a republic or democracy or democratic republic, right? It's totally two different things, two different mindsets, right? And so what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to empower you to go do your own research so you can get your own light. Okay, do you remember in the scriptures, in the Constitution, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. He wasn't saying I am the light bulb. I've heard people quote this scripture. I even heard songs, religious songs saying, we are the light of the world, meaning let your light, they were saying, let your light shine. There's little songs like that and everything, religious songs and stuff like that. See, man, and these people could be, be sincere, right? They can be genuine. They can love God, right? But see, you have to understand, you can be genuinely wrong. There's a lot of people genuinely wrong, right? But anyway, so the word knowledge means information, and information means light, right? The opposite of light is dark. Dark means ignorance. So that's what Jesus was talking about. That's what Christ and Jesus, right? The spirit man and the flesh man, Jesus, was talking about. He was talking about, I am bringing you revelation knowledge of who you truly are, not under the Democratic Republic or any of these other governments. And by the way, these other governments out here, communism, Zionism, all that, again, as I said before, they're just looking for power. Why? Because you always have to think about it when I say that. That's what we lost in Genesis. We lost. Adam rebelled, he sinned, he rebelled, he committed anarchy against the king and his government, and therefore turned his authority, his power over to the enemy, which was Satan. Now, why was Satan able to, formerly known as Lucifer, when he was in the kingdom of heaven, how was he able to deceive him? What did I say last week and the week before that? He caused woman to doubt. Somebody said, well, her name is Eve. Well, that was after the fall. But before, her name was woman, man with a womb, right? The doorway to this planet is how we all got through here in the physical realm, was through the doorway to this planet, through our mom, right? Put into her by our dads, right? You get all that whole biology. You learn that in school, right? So again, he was able to cause woman to doubt. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people miss. When you go back in Genesis and you look at that, what I just said, Satan used the body of a serpent, right? But Adam actually was there. Now, before Adam was there, or before Eve was there, Guess what? When God was giving a mandate in Genesis 1:26 NIV, you should look that up. You should memorize that, and you should look up the Hebrew and the Greek of those words and everything, and try to get the concept of that. You're not going to be able to get everything, but actually the mandate. So Adam, as I said before, Adam is a title. Adam is not the name. So when a man names their son Adam, you know, he's basically giving them a title. He thinks it's a name, but it's not. Again, there's just lack of knowledge, right? That's what I used to think, right? But when he was talking to Adam, he was talking to us, because all of us, every human being came out of that first man, right? Even woman came out of him, because that God laid him down, opened up his rib, and pulled and formed her, with the dust of the ground and everything like that. You guys know what I'm talking about. If not, just go back and read it again. Read it and reread it and reread it and over again. Why do you have to keep rereading stuff over and over again? Is because we've been programmed wrong, right? If you programmed your VCR wrong, I just dated myself. If you programmed your TV wrong, guess what? You have to go back to the manufacturer's manual, right? You have to you have to start and from the beginning, right? So always go back to the beginning if you have questions of why things are the way they are right now, right? Okay. So let me say this in closing. Again, the Bible is not a religious book. What's a religion? Well, I'll give you the short and the long. The short is that it's basically a system of rules. Now, the Old Testament or the Old Covenant, right, they do have religious things in there, but you have to understand, again, kingdom concept. You have to understand why God had to do that. Is because he was locked out from this colony, right? He's in the headquarters in the unseen, the kingdom of heaven, and we're in the scene, right? He took us out of himself, because that's what kings do. Kings want to have offspring. You can look that up online, right? They want to have a son, a daughter, and everything like that. So the offspring is us, mankind. And he put us in a body, gave us a soul, individual soul, and then also he gave us what? A vision and assignment. So each individual has a vision and assignment to glorify him. And that's why he put us on this third rock from the sun as a colony, right? You have to understand that. And so the colony, guess what, has a governor. Who's the governor? Well, he's the third part of the Trinity. No less or no more powerful than the second person of the Godhead, Christ, who came, in the form of Jesus, and the Father, right? Which the Father is, that also is a side note also too, that denotes family, right? So a lot of times people who already know this, he's my father and everything, but why are you struggling? Why are certain things happening in your life? It's because we've been taught, again, I'm going to say this and keep saying this again, because we have a democratic republic, a Greek mindset, right? And we have Roman hands. We get violent, right? Just look at the stats in America of violence and everything like that, and we know in our spirit, see, like I said before, I know in my spirit, in my mind, something wasn't right, being in a religion. Something was missing, right? Something was off. I know all of us have said that before. Something's not right about this. I can't understand. Just about general situations, we've all said that, I don't know. I can't really read that person, but something's off. Something's wrong. Women are very good at that. They have very good intuition. Us guys kind of think a little bit more logically. It's just how we were made. That's why you got to marry, at the same level, anyway. And even up, I would say marry up, and if she knows some certain things in certain areas that you don't, but that's a whole nother topic. So again, in closing, the Bible is not about a religion. I have to keep saying it. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. The long version of the term of religion is basically the worship of a deity through a set of beliefs expressed through rituals, customs, rites, right? I like to throw traditions in there, right? So some people want a religion, right? They just want to go to, for instance, if they're most Christians, hey, I just want to go to church. I just want to hear some praise and worship, get involved. I want to throw my hands up and everything, and all that is great in its place, okay? Please don't misquote me and run off and say, Tariq said this, and, heretic and all that stuff like that. It doesn't bother me because I know there's people going to do that anyway, but anyway. Some people just want to go and do that. They want to, like I said, they hear praise and worship. They want to get that. They want to get filled up, and get hoo ha ha hooray ha how, and all the emotions that you want to experience, right? And then they want to hear a 15-minute sermon, and they want to give a testimony, and then maybe they want to go to prayer and everything like that. And prayer is in a kingdom. Prayer means to petition. Actually, petition is a government word. So I'm not making fun of people and everything like that, because I used to be in this situation. But what I'm saying is that some people want a religion, right? They just want to do this and this, jump through the holes, and then, all right, the rest time is my time, leave me alone, right? I don't want to be bothered. There's people out there like that. I run into a lot of them, right? And I was headed in that direction because I had that mindset, right? But I knew I was supposed to do something more. And you wouldn't be watching my podcast, and the podcast that I was told, by the way, the Lord told me to do this 20 something years ago. But obviously there weren't podcasts back then that I didn't know what I know right now, and learning more and more about a kingdom concept. But anyway, so hopefully you guys get the concept of what I'm saying. I wanted to kind of stick close to the foundation of everything and just kind of reiterate over and over and over and over again, right? We have our favorite song. We listen to our favorite song over and over again. Hopefully it's a positive song. Hopefully it's a kingdom song, right? Because some of these songs that were taught in the hymnal book, and this is a very touchy subject, especially for people that look like me, as far as in the natural, during slavery time. And I wouldn't say during slavery time, because slavery is still going on physically. But the worst part of slavery is right here in the mental, because the mental, you can pass that along to your kids and kids' kids. And that's why things keep repeating, because slave ideas keep being passed along, slave ideology. But so in the slavery time, as they would say in history, the slaves would, sing these hymnals. Well, a lot of them couldn't read, not all of them, but a lot of them couldn't read and everything like that. And so they were going through all that oppression, and I can't blame them. If I was back then at that time also too, and they started, and then when they, during certain times, the master would have them have a black preacher take scriptures out of context, and because neither one of them knew, right? Remember, we were under a democratic republic, so we got Greek mindset, right? That Greek mindset, what does it say again in leadership? If you don't look like me, you're my slave. So that's why slavery it had nothing to do with color. It has everything to do with economics. That's what slavery has everything to do with, right? Because you can go to any African country, and Africans, they have slaves today in Egypt, right? If you go back thousands of years in Africa, they were slaves. You had gangs fighting against each other, tribes. Why? Because of what? Power. It all goes back to power. We all desire power. Why? Go back to Genesis again, because that's what we lost, right? We lost the power when Adam rebelled, our forefather, right? And so, so that's it. I keep saying that's it. But anyway, I just want you guys to get those basics. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. Next week, I'm going to go down another rabbit trail, and I'm still going to kind of use the foundation, what I just went over today, because I have to keep pounding it into our head. Why? Because we're still programmed the wrong way. I still have ideologies in my head, right? And these 6 inches between my head that are still Democratic Republic, right? So I'm still in bondage in certain areas in my life. But guess what? I know if I get, the more I learned about kingdom concepts, the more I hop online, the more I listen, the more I take notes, the more I get around people. And believe you me, it's very hard to find people that know some of the stuff I know here on this planet. I'm sure there's millions of people, but for the most part, most people have a democratic republic mindset, right? Or a communistic mindset. We have plenty of communists, we have plenty of socialists, all that stuff. All they're trying to do, and just so you know, different governments and different religions. And I know there's people out here that are listening to me that you may not know that's watching me, and that's great because they need to know this too. What they're looking for is they're looking for what Jesus promised, which is that kingdom of heaven, which is a planet, invisible country. But he wants us to make this earth look like heaven. That's why the disciples asked Jesus to pray. And disciples mean students. So that's an academic word. It's not a religious word, okay? Because Jesus was known as a rabbi, a master teacher, okay? And there was master teachers, there was mobile schools, right? There were rabbis back then. He was considered to be like a rabbi, the king slash rabbi, to learn his his ideology and well, you got the Pharisees, Sadducees, Herodians, all these different religions had rabbis, master teachers, and those students followed them around. That's why exactly what baptism means. I'm not going to get into that, but that's what the word Baptist means. They call John the Baptist. John actually was not a Baptist. John preached the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. You have to go to Matthew 3:2 in the NIV. So that's a whole nother topic right there in itself. But when you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to join this rabbi right here. I'm going to join this mobile school and follow him around and learn his ideology. You basically got dipped in the water, So just wanted you guys to kind of get the concept of that and everything like that. So the kingdom of God is here. What I want you guys to understand is that you're royalty. And please, please, please delve into the kingdom concept. Go over my talks over and over and over again. Open up the Constitution. Doesn't matter what religion that you are. I know deep inside that you're like a person in a desert and it's 120 degrees and you haven't drunk water in 2 days and your body's about to give out. You're about to pass, right? You're about to give up the ghost, as the old people used to say. Your spirit is about to leave your body because you're so thirsty. Your body's desiring the kingdom concepts, and just to go back to when I got my hair cut early today, my barber and the lady who was listening to me 2 chairs down, actually, they were inquiring about it because you know why? Go back to Genesis 1:26. See, we know on the inside of, in our spirit, we know something's missing. We know that's where we used to be at before the fall, before Adam sinned. And that's why we get frustrated. That's why we get angry, because we know, there's nothing worse. You should write this down. There's nothing, remember this, there's nothing worse than to know something is missing, but not know what it is and how to get it. That's so bad. And that's the worst feeling that we've all felt that before. And I don't care if you're a millionaire. There's going to be billionaires and millionaires listen to me before. But I guarantee you down the line, there's a lot of people who have a lot of influence financially are going to want to know this kingdom concept because they're empty on the inside. They have the money. They figured out, you can get money, right? You can learn some success principles. They're out there. You can read some books. You can get some leadership. You can make money. You can make 2 or 3 times more than what you make right now. You can, if you really want to do that and learn those success principles. But a lot of those people are spiritually bankrupt. They're spiritually dead, right? So if they were to die, they go to hell, And here's a side note about that, and I get out of here for the 6th, 7th time. Hell is a place of incarceration, I found out. Just like in the natural, when you break the law, right, and they catch you and you're convicted, you go through the process. This is a legal process, as I said before, and you go to jail, right? You lose your citizenships. You give up your rights, right? So hell was never created for mankind, right? Hell is a place of incarceration. It's a place of torment. So you got to remember that you're a spirit. You have a soul and you live in a body, right? So when you give up, they say give up the ghost. And when you leave your body, most people on the planet think that, okay, your body just goes back into the dust and that body's you. No, that body's not you. It's just a mirror of you. It's like a hand in a glove, right? You take the glove off, drop the glove falls to the ground, right? It's dead. Why? Because the hand represents the spirit and the spirit is out of the body. No longer do we have authority and power in this natural realm, okay? We lose authority and power when we leave the body or we get evicted or, sickness, disease, or whatever, anything like that. And so, yes, so that's what we need to do, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. I don't expect it to make sense, because it didn't to me when I first heard this from my spiritual dad before. But the more I listened to it, the more I studied for myself, the more I took the bull by the horn. I took responsibility and I was accountable to myself and my family. I said, I got to know the truth. I got to know why I'm here. I can't just keep going on this Ferris wheel over and over and over again, because I got generations coming behind me. Just because my generations before me were ignorant of it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who, for instance, are in Christianity and they are born again. See, I was one of those people. I don't know if I told you. I told you this one time. That was about 2 or 3 talks ago. So I got preached I got preached a gospel, which was the cross, but not the gospel, which is the kingdom, and that's what Jesus preached, and that's what he told us to preach. But he did preach the cross, and I came to Jesus not because I loved him, but because of condemnation and guilt. Many of you know what I'm talking about, right? Because it's like, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to burn up. I don't know what that is, but that don't sound kosher. I got burnt before on the stove. I got my butt burned up by my mama and my daddy, and that was hot. You know what I'm saying? That hurt. So I don't want to go to hell, right? So hell is a place of incarceration, but that's not the worst part. The worst part, if you read the Constitution, is that, and this is true, you should research this. There's volcanoes in the heart of the earth, right? That's logical. Think about that. You should look that up. There's volcanoes in the heart of the earth, and it's called the lake of fire. That's the worst part. People are going to hell. That's a temporary place, right? If somebody went to jail, or somebody was put in jail because they got convicted of a crime, I'm talking about naturally speaking, and they go to a temporary place like a holding cell, and then if the crime was bad enough, then they go to another facility which has more security, right? Do you understand? Hopefully you got that concept. So hell, that was only designed for Satan and his cohorts, right? And the third of the angels that rebelled against God's government. Okay. So again, this is a legal thing, right? So anyway, I'm done. That's it. I'm not going to give you guys everything. Hey, just to let you guys know, sooner or later, hopefully sooner, I'm working on it right now. I'm kind of going through some stages right now. I'm going to develop a course that you guys can learn this also too. And I got some stuff in there I'm going to put in there about business principles, because I told you my testimony last week. My wife and I went from $0 moving down here in less than 9. Me applying these principles that I've talked about through my previous talks, went from 0. A household of 6 people, $0, and by the end of this year, we'll make over 7 figures, right? At least 7 figures, right? Okay, and I applied some of these kingdom principles, right? But prior to that, we were just we were blessed, we were learning a lot of religious things and everything like that. The Lord was meeting us where we were walking in the light that we were walking. We were walking in knowledge, and he was meeting us where we were. We were sincere, right? But how many of you know that God wants you to fulfill the vision and the assignment that he put inside of you? Because you got to remember, in the kingdom, a king is responsible for his citizens. So a kingdom citizens, and by the way, that's written in the Bible also too. Citizens, kingdom citizens, and citizens are in there. Ambassadors are in there also too. Those are government words that you guys already know, right? And so if we fail, which there's a lot of people who I was talking to somebody today, his father passed, right? And I don't know if I don't know. Well, let me put it like this. There's a lot of people who most people have not reached their vision, achieved their vision and their assignment, right? Remember what I said before, the most, how can I put this, wealthiest spot on the earth are cemeteries, right? Whether they're cemeteries in the ocean, cemeteries in the desert, cemeteries in the wood, or cemeteries that we drive by every day, because those people, their seeds were lying dormant in them, and they did not know about the kingdom concept. Therefore, they couldn't tap into that dormant seed to allow that tree to grow, and for our fellow man to eat the fruit from their tree, so to speak, right? So you have seeds of greatness in you, and I'm looking forward to helping you guys bring that out. Not just a course, but after a while, I'm going to start doing some coaching. Also, I'm going to start doing some talks and everything like that. And yes, it's not going to be, I'm not doing it for free, right? Here's what I found out. People value things that they have to pay for, right? A lot of the knowledge that I've gotten over these last 25 years, especially the last 5 years, that will make a monumental impact not only on my family, but on my community. So I'm not just looking to bless myself and my family. They're automatically going to get blessed. I'm looking to bless my community, my country, and my world. Why? Because of Genesis 1:26. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let them, talking about mankind, the species called mankind, have dominion over the earth. So this is part of my responsibility on this earth and why this earth looks the way it is. This is part of your responsibility. Now, I know there's a percentage of you who are just going to walk away, or you're going to think, you know what, you've been spiritually, mentally abused so much, you're not going to believe in yourself anymore. But I'm hoping that you do. I'm hoping that you at least take one step in that direction. So here's your homework. Start studying just basic stuff about the difference between a kingdom and a democratic republic. Right? I don't care what religion you're part of. I don't care if you're born again or not. And for you born again people, again, talking about the cross, the Calvary. Again, as I said before, I believe in the cross. I met the King. I got washed in the blood. The whole purpose of getting washed in the blood was to become righteous, right? We had to be realigned, repositioned with God's government, right? We had to be washed in the blood. He had to clean the vessel, the spirit, right? You have to look on those three different realms: spirit, soul, and body. So when I'm talking, you have to ask yourself, well, is he talking about my spirit? Is he talking about my soul, which is made up of my mind, my will, my emotions, my intellect? Or is he talking about the physical realm? Okay. So when you read the Bible, when you read the Constitution, especially, just all the way through Old Testament and New Testament, you have to ask yourself those three questions. Oh, and here's another quick tip. Man, I'm giving you all these good nuggets. This is what I didn't know 20 years ago. And this is what I actually didn't want to know 20 years ago, because in Mark 13, it actually says, not Mark 13, Matthew 13, it says, we close our eyes. So again, people perish because of lack of knowledge. It's not because he didn't say Satan, he didn't say sin. He said, because we close our eyes. Why? Because we've been ingrained so much with that democratic Greek thinking, the capitalistic thinking. We have to do things on our own. We declared independence from God. And so that's why, again, Christ had to come through the doorway to this planet. He had to come through Jesus. He had to come through come through Mary, come through that he had to come through a body so he can have that authority and power, right? And do the things that he's doing, right? And I know I want to get off here, but I feel like I need to say this also too. If you don't think, here's some things also too. Some of you are have sicknesses, disease. Some of you are poor spiritually. Some of you are poor, financially. Some of you are in debt financially and everything like that. There's an answer for every single thing in the Bible about that. So you got to remember him being a king. And if you're born again and you're a kingdom citizen, right? Then you have to understand, well, two things here. So if you're a kingdom citizen, meaning you've been washed in his blood, a king's responsibility is to make sure that his citizens, his sons, right, in Christ, sons meaning offspring, meaning daughters also too, succeed. Why? Because when a product does not succeed, the manufacturer looks bad. You can apply that to the physical realm. If your phone fails, if it keeps messing up, the manufacturer, Samsung, Apple, whatever, they look bad. That's why they give us guarantees and they give us warranties, right? Because the reputation is at stake. So it's the same way spiritually. So if you're a kingdom citizen, you're born again, right? You're washed in his blood, right? And by the way, you can be a kingdom citizen and be born again, or you can be born again but still be in religion, right? You can still think the wrong way, still think according to the Greeks, right, religiously, or you can be spiritually dead and not be a child of God, right? And that's spiritually speaking. So you people, you guys are smart, okay? You guys are real smart. Just listen to this at least 2 or 3 more times. This is going to take some time, right? This is not a rush type thing. But what I want you to do is I want to empower you so you can empower your family and your community where you are. And I want to applaud your success because I want you to reach your vision, your assignment, like I'm doing for me and myself, and my family and my community and everything like that. Because keep this in mind, this is the government. So that means every single human being has to give an account. Okay? He's going to give us we have to give an account standing before the King, Christ, right? Because that's legality, right? When somebody commits a criminal act in the natural, guess what? They got to go before the judge. Same thing. All this stuff that you see about government in the natural, that came from this book right here, the Bible. Okay. Well, this is not a book. This is a variation of it. But I got a Bible right here. Anyway, NIV. That's the NIV. That's the one you want to look at and study kingdoms. Okay. And you'll understand the Bible. I'm out. Kingdom Diplomat out. Have a great week.